Welcome back. Still Breakfast Extra here, big story segment. This morning, we delve into an issue that sits at the heart of Nigeria's economic stability. The Senate's move to advance a bill banning the use of foreign currency for domestic transactions. Yes, we've heard this before. Now, this proposed legislation aims to reinforce the Naira's standing amidst years of declining value and reliance on the dollar and other foreign currencies. Now, while supporters argue that this measure will curb dollarization and strengthen the Naira, critics have raised concerns about its impact on businesses, trade, and individual freedoms.
And so joining us to analyze the implications of this proposed bill is Muktar Mohammed. He's a seasoned financial expert and the CEO of Finance with Muktar, and is known for his expertise in navigating Nigeria's complex economic landscape. And he will help us break down the potential effects of this legislation on the economy and the everyday lives of Nigerians. Muktar, as always, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and good morning to you.
Muktar, I want to say good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My first appearance on your breakfast show.
Yes.
It seemed like when she was telling about you, you were like, Namibi this.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is now.
Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for joining us. And let's just get started with your thoughts on the Senate's proposal to ban the use of foreign currencies for domestic transactions. Is this a good move? It is not. Is it not? Is first time hearing this? Is it long overdue? Your thoughts?
Well, I just think sometimes the Senate just like to say some things and just for us to clap hands for them and say, oh, this is what you are doing. They don't need to make that promise. What's the legal tender in Nigeria? Is the Naira. So anything outside of that is not acceptable. So this is coming, you're banning dollarization or trading in foreign currency. It's not supposed to be an issue that should come up by the legislation. It has to be an issue that's already on ground. The legal tender in Nigeria is the Naira. So if somebody tells me to pay a certain service by the use of the dollar, all I need to do is to go back to them and report them to the security agency, because that's not a legal tender. That's an illegal trade. So the legislator coming up with the legislator is just playing to the gallery, playing to jamboree. Look, like your colleague said during the introduction, this is something that has been there before now. I mean, they've said it over and over. The CBN has made pronouncements that you cannot do any transaction in dollars in Nigeria. They've made all these pronouncements, but they've not backed it up with any action. Today, some embassies still collect money from Nigeria by dollar. Even when they are not even collecting by dollar, their exchange rate is far, far above the official rate or the market-driven willing seller, willing buyer rate. So for me, sometimes we just decide to stop because we have to say something, we have to legislate. Legislate what? What is the legal tender? The legal tender is the Naira. I don't need the legislation to know that dollar is not supposed to be obtainable yet. You cannot go to America and use Naira to do any transaction. Even when you have your Naira card, you have to convert it to dollar for you to be able to do a transaction. You cannot go even to South Africa and use the Nigerian Naira instead of Iran. You cannot even go to Ghana here and decide that you want to use Naira instead of the Ghana CD to make transaction. Even when you have dollar, you have to change it to the Ghana CD to make a transaction. So for me, it's just a play to the gallery, making noise about what is not supposed to be. They should face more important things and legislate for the betterment of this country.
Muktar,
will it affect businesses? How will it affect businesses? How? It's not a legal tender. It's not supposed to affect businesses.
But Muktar, then there is international trade. You mentioned some of them, but you also said something about it not being the first time that we have actually come around this corner. We are here yet again. So why didn't it work in the first place? Why does it say, or what challenges are in front of the Senate after this proposal? What do you think the challenges that might be faced are in implementing this?
Let me tell you, you talked about international trade. You call it international trade. It's not local trade. So when you exchange the Naira to the dollar within Nigeria, I want to do a transaction within an embassy, and you're telling me to pay the Naira. I mean to pay dollar for that transaction. It's not an international trade. It's a localized trade. If I'm doing a trade, maybe I'm doing a business in Nigeria, then I have to collect my form in the US, then I can do the dollar there. But if I bring dollar into Nigeria, I have to convert it to Naira to do trade. That's a legal tender. Even international trade is different from localized trading, so we must clear that up.
Even at
what
embassies.
is the
even at
yes?
embassies?
What is the yes?
Go ahead.
Okay. is different. Then when you talk about what you just said, what will be the problem or what they will hinder it? Look, there's not any what will hinder it. It's time for them to put their feet on the ground. And I thought there should not be a pronouncement by the legislation and then backed up with CBN. CBN have made the pronouncement. They are the ones in charge of monetary policy in this country. They are the one that sets monetary policy rules in this country. So they are the one to set it off. Legislator going there and saying whatever they want to say does not, unless the CBN has to back it up. The CBN have said time with that number that the legal tender in this country is the Naira. So they have to back it up. But unfortunately, these same legislators that are talking there, they want to apply to visa. This embassy will still tell them to pay dollars, and they will pay dollars. They will not challenge it. They will not come openly to say, look, we went to this embassy. They told us to pay dollar instead of paying Naira for our visa. They will not say that. So definitely they know what they are doing. Like I say, for me, it's all an exercise in futility.
Muktar, is it an exercise in futility? But Nigeria is a heavily import state. Like, we are heavily invested when it comes to imports. We rely on those imports, and people who do business in the import-export, they deal with the FX, whether it's dollar, whether it's pounds, but not in Naira. And critics have argued that it would impact that sector very critically and adversely. Do you agree as well?
Well, it has already had the impact. The impact that is driven that sector is because of the exchange rate volatility, which we have been facing, the lack of liquidity in the retail side. When you bring in a goods to Nigeria, if you're a local, if you let me give an example, you are bringing a car to Nigeria, they will charge you in dollar terms, but you are expected to pay in Naira, the exchange rate at that day. So definitely, yes, international trade, when you want to do it, that's why I say it's not localized trade, it's international trade. When you want to do international trade, the legal tender for every international trade globally is the dollar. They've made it like that, even when you go to the United Kingdom. And that's why in every country, they have their reserve in dollars because of international trade. That is there. So, but when you are bringing that goods to the country that you are supposed to sell that good to, even if the price is in dollars, it will be reversed to the local tender of that particular country. Now, why do we have dollars? Again, if you are doing international trade now and you need dollar, that is where it comes to play. That's why we talk about liquidity. Then you must officially ask for it, because you are not doing that transaction in Nigeria. You are doing it outside the shore of this country. So you need FX. And once you do that, you go to the willing buyer, willing seller market, or you go to the parallel market now. The parallel market itself is the greatest challenge we are facing as a nation at this moment, because that is the retail aspect of the autonomous foreign exchange market or the foreign exchange market. There's no liquidity in that space. That's why you have seen the kind of volatility you are seeing in the exchange rate. So we must boost liquidity in that place so that if I want to do international trade, guess what I'm saying? International trade. I'll go there to get that dollar. But again, remember that even in my international trade, the fact that I am executing it here from Nigeria, I will go with Naira for them to give me dollar. I won't go with dollar for them to give me Naira. So that's why I'm talking about international trade is different from local trade.
Okay. Now, Muktar, let's talk about trade here in Nigeria. Let's talk about the black market. Let's talk about the parallel market. But what they're proposing, how is this going to affect these two markets? Will it affect it in any way?
Yes, it will be positive. It will be positive if the proposal goes through and then we decide to implement. That means the demand for FX will go down. Like I said, the current liquidity issue we are having in the market is largely driven by the retail sector. Like you just pointed out. Now, if I want to apply for a visa, I have to look for between $500 or $1,000 to pay to the whatever agency that's in charge of that to give me a visa. So that is putting more pressure. I'm not looking for 10,000. You know how many Nigerians want to apply for visa now in this country? So you can imagine the pressure that's thrown to the parallel market or the official market. That is one. Secondly, again, you have to also look at in terms of SMEs. So most of these SMEs, they do business outside the shore of this country. And what they need FX, like 1,500, 2,000, 10,000 at most, or people that want to pay school fees also do the same thing. So what we need to do is to boost liquidity in that space for genuine trade. Let's put it, genuine trade. Now, you want to trade outside the shore of the country? Yes, definitely, because again, some of those trade outside the shore of the country when their goods goes outside, they in turn bring in effects into the Nigerian economy. Now, let me give you an example. We are beginning to see stability in the petroleum sector. I said it in one program, I said this is the first time in a long while, nobody is so much scared about the price of PMS after, during the festivity period. Rather, we are now beginning to see a competition whereby PMS will go down. And like Aliko Dangote said in one of his recent interviews, he said this is largely driven by the dollar to Naira policy that was implemented by the federal government. So when you tie that to what we are seeing now, then it will begin to do transaction, mostly for localized transaction with Naira. Definitely that will help bring down the exchange rate, and that will create stability, and that will make businesses begin to expand, and that will be good for Nigeria economy.
And we also have to talk about the parallel market, although in terms of whether it's the black market or parallel market, could banning of foreign currencies, for local transactions potentially lead to an increase in our black market or parallel markets?
Well, it could, because again, it could if we don't have liquidity in that space, retail. It's all driven by demand and supply. And when you ban that and then you don't have implementation, then they go behind, they go under. When I mean they go under, you don't see them publicly again. And people still want this demand. So they will definitely go behind the scene, and that could drive up the price in the black market. That's why it's called black market. But now the government have come out and said, look, even the Bureau de Change can participate in the autonomous foreign exchange market, willing buyer, willing seller. So now that means they could drive liquidity to that space. We have a reserve now about 40 billion. And so once they begin to participate in that electronic driven transaction, definitely we will see the positivity of that. So we won't get to that point whereby because of the policy, because of the lack of implementation or lack of rule of law, they go behind and become a proper black market. Because what we call black market now is not even black market. That's why we've changed it to parallel market. When you talk black market, are people operating behind the scene. You don't really get to know them. It's like their face is shaded, you don't know them. But presently, you know who operates in the back. So, but if you decide to implement that, they will go under. Because you have legislature, you have the security agency, they can be able to arrest them. But like I said, it's all boiled down to what are this policy. Do we have the capability to implement what we've said is wrong? So for me, that has been the problem of this country, regulation.
And its effect on inflation, real quick?
Oh, that would be huge. That would be huge. Let me tell you, the next inflationary figure that we are going to see with the recent reduction in fuel price, no matter how small it is, you are going to see the impact on the inflationary figure. If you stabilize the exchange rate, just like your colleagues say, most of our transactions we are exporting from outside the shore of this country. So if you bring down the exchange rate, it's going to bring down the cost of goods and services. The current inflationary pressure is not driven because of too much liquidity in the system. It's not driven because of too much borrowing. No, it's largely driven because of the exchange rate. And so once we are able to address that exchange rate volatility, you have also addressed inflation. Remember, now we are beginning to see those things play up in the petroleum sector, because according to the data that was produced by the CBN before now, that 40% of FX demand is largely driven by those that want to import refined petroleum products. Imagine that 40% goes down, and then you're able to create a buoyant retail market. Definitely the exchange rate will drastically come down, even maybe beyond the 1,400 that they are proposing. So that will drive down inflation.
Well, we hope to see how this will, pan out, whether or not the Senate will move to passing a legislation indeed, and how the implementation will be, and whether or not they will be able to garner, public trust in this policy. Because if there's one thing for certain, Nigerians have had enough when it comes to all the austerity measures and the policies, when it comes to threatening the Naira or just the economic reforms in and of itself. But Muktar, we want to say thank you for taking out the time this morning, for joining us and sharing your insights on this very critical issue. We do hope that this will help us, in our journey to stabilizing the Naira and reshaping Nigeria's economy. Muktar Mohammed, once again, many thanks.
Thank you for having me. You have a pleasant week and compliments of the season.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Likewise.